I'm Brandon Miller, and you are listening to Coach. This weekly series dives deep into the world of Clifton strengths and how they impact your daily life. Hear from certified strengths coaches on the ins and outs, quirks, and characteristics of all 34 strengths and 4 domains and how they play out in real life. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to Coach. Today I have with me TyAnn Osborn, and we are going to unpack significance. I feel like we need intro music, TyAnn, for that one.
It should. It should have a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, this strength is one of my all-time favorites to talk about because it is hands down the number one most misunderstood of all 34 strengths. And I like to point out that the founder had it in his top 5.
I tell people that too. So, it's got to be good.
So if anyone was going to exit out way back in the day, it would have been Dr. Clifton. He kept it in and he embraced it as one of the most important strengths in the world, even though it can be most often misunderstood. I think we can agree as we go through this today, TyAnn, that this strength is powerful.
It's super powerful. And this is one of those things, Brandon, that, I like statistics, and we often talk about the most frequently found themes that we see often in people's top 5s, like achiever, like responsibility. But significance is one of the least frequently found themes. So significance, self-assurance, and command, those usually less than 5% of people have that in their top 5. So I always say when I see that in someone's top 5, I get excited. I'm like, ooh, let's talk about that. We got to bring it. But that's not always people's first impression.
It is not. And if listener today, you're noting the familiarity between TyAnn and I, we go way back. Both of us were certified in 2013. So we are the OGs of the global strengths movement. Oh, I can say that to you. You can find TyAnn at TyAnnOsborn.com. In 12 years, she has been in business, serving all sorts of industries, right? I mean, you've been around the gamut. She is an amazing leadership teacher, one of the foremost experts on Clifton strengths in the world. She actually, like myself, go way back to Now Discover Your Strengths, where we had this thick book and they only gave us top 5, and it felt so unfulfilling to just have 5, but it was good for them, right? I mean, we had the 5.
Didn't you want to know? You're like, wait, where's the rest? Give it to me.
I'm like, why don't you give this out? Yeah. So we climbed that hill later. So TyAnn, tell everyone today, they can find you at TyAnnOsborn.com. What are you up to? What are you doing in your line of work?
What am I not up to, Brandon? So, kind of this will be a long answer to what you're asking, but I was really thinking about significance and how much it drives what I am up to. And so the thing that I'm up to is, my heart just gets so excited and really lifts when I help other people discover their value and their worth. And I'm a fundamental believer that everyone has inherent worth and value, but a lot of times people forget it along the way, or you're in a workplace that you just don't feel you're valued or that you're seen. And so when I get to work with individuals and leaders and their teams and help them rediscover how amazing they are and how awesome they are together, my heart just sings. And so to have created a company where that's what I do, that's what I focus on, and now expanding that work with and through other people on the team, I mean, that lights me up.
I love that. Thank you, Ty. And I want to comment on the piece of that, see their value, because when you talk about significance, and I like to connect significance to doing things of significance, things that have impact, things that have lasting impression, legacy, long-term value, because if it's worth doing, one, it's worth doing excellently. It's worth doing in a sustainable way, and it's worth enduring to the point that what we put out there will live beyond us. It's going to go beyond what we do. And if you hear TyAnn talking today in how she describes her work, my heart sings when I help people find their value. That connection to work having purpose and meaning. And I think we could both agree significance really resides in that space. And when it doesn't have it, I imagine you have found throughout your career that can create dissonance, that can actually cause that significance to move in a way that isn't as helpful.
I was thinking about when I was a kid and kind of growing up, I was the kid who always asked why. And you've got a whole pile of kids, and I've got a couple as well. And you always know that one kid who asks the questions why. Well, I think back to that, Brandon, and it's because I had a genuine interest and desire to find out, how does this fit in to the bigger whole, or why are we doing this? Why is it important? And when we look at how strengths are kind of broken out to those leadership domains, any of those influencing themes like significance, it's all about why. And so, unfortunately, I had the very old school father who used to say, because I said so, that's why. Well, as a parent, I mean, you and I've talked strengths based parenting a lot before, but it was always really important to me not to give that answer to my kids because I know how frustrating it was for me. And you get into the workplace and you find that there's things that are coming. And if you ask those same questions, why are we doing this? Why is it important? How is this, helping us move the business forward? And if you don't get satisfying answers to that, it just is incredibly frustrating. And then I found that leads me straight into the disengagement category. Or I'm like, well, if you can't explain why this is important, then I don't know why I should be spending my time on it. And, that can go south pretty fast, especially if you're not quite sure how to articulate your needs and how to, explain or express why you're asking these things.
Because we're talking about easily the most misunderstood strength. So, of 34, you and I can go on about coaching people who see this in their top 5 or 10, and there's almost an embarrassment. There's there's almost a denial. How in the world did that come up? Why does it say this about me? And I don't think early on Gallup did people a lot of favors there. I think some of the descriptive language might not have been as helpful as it is now. But you're an early adopter, so because you're back in now, discover your strengths 2001 to 2 or 3. It was back in that time. You see significance come up. What were some of your thoughts back then?
Yeah. And, you and I work with people all the time, and I always call it strength shame. That most of the people are excited when they get their themes and they want to tell everyone, or they're excited to see their themes on a name tag or their name badge or whatever it is. And that is one that people, almost universally are like, I don't know. And that might be a kind way to put it, like, I'm not ready to accept it yet. And you're right. When you go back into some of the original materials and you read it, you're like, gosh, that makes it sound like I'm not a very nice person, or that it's the me show. And now there might be people who know me who would say, no, that tracks. But I would like to say that it's not the me show. It's more like, I'm awesome and I want you to understand how awesome you are. And then together we're awesomer. And the more people who we can get in this awesome, it's like a virtuous cycle. Like we just lift each other up and up. But it can take a while to get there. And one of my early clients that I was coaching, she's an assistant city manager. And so, important, big role. And she got significance as her number one. And she really was like, please don't tell anybody I have this. And, please don't put it on my name tag. Please don't put me on the team grid. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on there? And she said, this is just going to seem like ego. And I worry about that. And I'm like, okay. So, as we do in coaching, we talk people through that and ask what's behind that. But the biggest thing for significance is really helping people kind of reframe. And just like you said, it's about legacy. It's about importance. It's about things that are bigger than us and how we can contribute and how that contributes to the bigger part of the world. So for her, it's like, okay, working at a city, it's incredibly important because the things you do affect the citizens of the city. Like you're making really important decisions. This has impact into someone's life. And this is a particular city that wants to get those designations of like best city to live in, fast growth, great for employers, great for citizens, and that kind of thing. And so helping her switch that, just kind of make that switch in her head from, oh, it's not about me. It's really helping shepherd these programs. And so I suggested that that could be her gift when she's working with the other city executives and the city council, is really to use that as a frame for, okay, why are we doing this thing? How is it helping? How is it important? And if it's not, that's an opportunity then to take a look and say, well, should we be spending our resources in that space?
I want us listeners to hear this today, the term strength shame, because TyAnn, perhaps, and I've heard this, there are strengths coaches out there that when they approach a strength like this, they almost don't know how to go. They're not sure what to do with it, and they can really fumble the play. They can really come in and almost reinforce that excessive ego side because they've developed a bias, and so they feed into that part. Because let's be fair, every strength has its, to use the term we were taught, balcony and basement, right? Every strength has that. And the three that you described earlier, command, self assurance, significance, are the three rarest strengths in the world. So naturally, having scarcity equals a misunderstanding or an unknown. So with that unknown is, I don't know how that is. Now, at the same time, because these are huge strengths, like these strengths enter the room before the person walks in. The presence goes before them. And so, yes, in their basement, it can be bad. It can be destructive. It can cause harm. There is no question about that. Every strength has a dark side. Yes, the dark side of these can be dark, as in any others. However, with that reality comes the light, or the best can be world changing, life altering, transforming. And as coaches, that's our job. Our job is to help them to get to the light, to get to that balcony, to get to the brilliance and the beautiful. But one must start with the place of, do I deeply appreciate, respect, see the benefit of, can relate to being a high significance who coaches significance? I imagine there's some natural advantage because you are in process and coaching through the process. How do we help practitioners come to really appreciate this strength and really overcome some bias with us today?
So I think the first thing, Brandon, just what you said, kind of recognizing that, we are humans and we do have bias. And it is a human trait to be attracted to other people like us, or, more attracted to the things that we know and feel easy. So I think one of the biggest gifts for practitioners is to realize you don't have to be the world class expert in all the themes and everything. The person is the expert in themselves. And we're a guide to help them uncover the best parts of themselves. And so I really think if you go in with the, seek to understand and ask. One thing I tell all my workshop participants and my coachees is, just because we know our strengths, that gives me a neat starting point for questions. Not, oh, I know everything there is to know about you and I don't have to talk to you. And so for me, just asking, how does significance show up for you? What did you think about that? Let's read through your report together and see what stands out to you. And then occasionally, again, just because people have such a mental block about some, they're like, I just don't know. I'm like, that's okay. Why don't you sit with it? Why don't you go home and talk to a partner or call your best friend or ask a manager and see if these, or do they see any of these things? And so I try to get people to realize strengths are neutral, but, as we were taught, but I like to say all strengths are awesome. I really do think they're awesome. And so it's just kind of asking the right questions to help someone along the journey rather than me having to sell you on why your significance is awesome. I know it's awesome.
So we're going to play a little game of what to say and what not to say. So I want you to imagine that one of us listening today, we're coaching TyAnn, and she just got her first strengths report, and dun dun dun, here's significance. So let's start in the reverse. So what would be good things to not say to TyAnn when you see that significance show up on that report?
First, I think you really have to work on your poker face, because even just reading the report and kind of the nose wrinkle, Brandon, when people are like, ooh, this is quite a set of strengths you've got here. I mean, even just how our face shows up.
I would add your tone just then.
Right.
Because even through the phone, I would have heard that.
Oh, of course you would.
I would have heard like, what's wrong with me?
Right. What is wrong with me? And then so imagine that I'm the coachee and I'm looking for your guidance and I probably do need reassurance. It can be scary to have a coaching relationship. Even if I've been told it's positive, it can still be scary to be vulnerable with someone or, to just be putting some language around these things. And so if I feel like I have a trusted guide in my corner who asks me questions, who can help provide some context, that's going to be so much better. But the tone is so important. And here's the thing about significance: we're super dialed into what other people think or what other people are telegraphing. And so, how this looks great is when I'm in front of a group, man, I am super dialed into how is this stuff landing? Who seems like they're getting it? Who seems like they might be a little stuck? And I'm able to adapt on the fly in terms of what's happening. But imagine that I'm with you and you're kind of trying to give me some insights about myself and you're telegraphing something that's not coming across that great. And I'm like, oof, I don't feel so good about this. And all of us come into situations with baggage, right? And I think especially in our kind of corporate workforce, we're so used to getting performance feedback, which should be a neutral term. And instead, Brandon, if someone's like, hey, Brandon, can I give you some feedback? 99% of the time, it's not going to be something great that comes out of their mouth after that.
Yeah, that's not usually a lead in for "You're awesome." That's all the feedback I wanted to give you.
Exactly. And I think with significance, it can be just so sensitive to that because if you hear negative things, it really means that I missed the mark. I missed the mark when I was reading the room or reading you or whatever. And so, it can really take the wind out of your sails.
Yeah, and so I want us all to hear that. Super dialed in to what people think about me, and with high significance, you're very aware of the applause. You're very well aware of the approval. You know when you have it, and you know when you don't, and it is why people with high significance are standout performers. They work tirelessly to be at their very best.
Right. And I think, Brandon, that just that nuance right there, I think that's part of what people misunderstand or don't quite make it across to the end goal is okay, why is it important? Why is it about I'm up there and I'm doing a good job? It's not ultimately about me. It's because I'm so wanting you to understand the content and see how this is important for you as a person, for you as a team member. And if I miss the mark on that, I have let you down. And so I think people miss that connection between, oh, it's just Ty, she's out on stage and she wants it to be all about her. And I'm like, I do want to give you the best possible presentation, but it's because of the why behind it, not just so I can, poof on stage in a cloud of glitter and then peace out and everything's super about me. That's really not it.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I see this strength show up at its best, it's breathtaking. I mean, it is a strength because whatever you combine it with, it makes it better. That's what I've noticed with significance. Whatever you put around it, it makes it better. Now, because there's a dual responsibility, right? So there's the responsibility of the one who's having and holding it to learn when and how does this work? How do I name and understand and call attention to this within me so I can see the best and brightest and most brilliant use? And then how do I help others understand that this drive, this tenacity, this fuel to my fire, it's never going away. It will never go away my whole life. I will always have this and I will always be thinking about what you're thinking and thinking about what they're thinking and then thinking about what I'm doing in light of both. There's this pressure that a significance puts on themselves. And I don't know that we as coaches, or certainly you put them in the management space or a significant other, the pressure I feel can never be exceeded by the pressure you apply. You'll never put more on me than I put on me, ever. You couldn't. But sometimes you can add to mine to the point that you weigh me down to where I can't handle it anymore. And I'm wondering for someone with high significance, have you felt that in the past? Have you been in that space where, whoa, like I'm getting weighted by people around me and now this is turning on me. It's starting to turn to something that's not healthy.
Yeah, and something you said about, when we have these things, you never not have it. And to me, it's a little bit like competition. That's in my top 10. That's high for you as well. And I've especially noticed with people who really have a competitive drive, you will never not be competitive. And so for someone to come up to you and be like, hey, Brandon, it doesn't really matter. I need you to give a little less. You can't turn that off. You can't undo that. You can't unsee it. And so it's the same with significance. If someone's like, you know, we just got to do this, or you just need to be concerned less, or whatever. It's kind of like telling someone, just calm down. That never calmed anybody down ever. And so I think really the understanding with people, or to be able to say, it seems like if we're working with kids, it seems like you've got some big feelings around this, or I see a lot of emotion on your face. Can you help me understand where that's coming from? What's going on behind that? And I have seen often with some of these like really powerful themes when we're coaching people, sometimes there's tears that come up. And, that's a great time to just to take a pause and say, what's going on here? Tell me what's behind these emotions, and letting the person tell you. And then I can modulate my approach if I'm the manager on, okay, let me perhaps provide some context, or how can we restructure this so that it's a great fit for you, or whatever. But I'll tell you, especially when I was younger in my career, something I was really sensitive to were just what I call busy work projects. And you know how it is. It's just whatever. And I really chafed at that. And I couldn't quite figure out why my peers were like, okay. And they would go off and do it. And that I'm the one that seemed to have the problem. And then because I'm high communication, I can't shut up about it. And so that didn't often serve me well when I was younger. But I have this vivid memory. I had this college job, and this is how old I am, Brandon, is it was working at a physical therapist's office where they had the therapist would dictate on their little dictation machine, and they would have these little tapes after each patient encounter. And they had stacks of these little tapes that needed to be transcribed. Well, I'm a really fast typist. This is my secret party skill. I know that's super cool. And so I got this job, and my job was to transcribe all these little tapes. Well, I'm super fast, so I finished. Like it didn't take that long. And then I went to the office manager and said, "Okay, I'm done now. What do I do?" And she just said, "Well, you should have made it last longer. That was the work." And I'm like, "So I just have to sit here for like 40 hours?" Like, "Yep." Ugh. I mean, just
That's the worst thing you can say. That's the worst.
it was the worst. And other people, I think, might think, "Oh, that's great. I would love that." I'm like, "No, that's the worst. I need to be engaged with stuff that matters and is making a difference." And to be told on so many levels, like, just phone it in. I'm like, oh, that just crushed my heart.
Wow. Okay, so here's a fun question that we're gonna wrap with. If you were coaching her, okay, so with what you know today, and you're coaching her then, how would you coach her through that? How would you coach her to whatever comes next? Curious because when we are in the market and we're whatever sector we're in, we're going to encounter young leaders, emerging leaders, and it's right now such an important part of what we do because one of the greatest needs of the market right now are succession ready leaders, and every organization we talk to is thinking about succession and future leaders. So we're doing this a lot, and so you and I are going to run into significance, right? So let's take you there. How would you coach her? Knowing what you know now and thinking just about her significance, how would you coach her?
So the first thing I would do for her and the hiring manager, by the way, would be to look at how can we see this in the broader picture, in the broader context? Why is this important? And I would start there. And I think so many people and so many managers get real hung up on just the bullet points of a job description. And so, if that's the key thing listed, you're like, well, you're doing it. Okay. But it really hasn't been put into context about why are we doing this thing? And then I would ask, okay, well, what are your observations of this thing? What are you seeing? Now that you know where we're going, are there any better ways we could do it? Could you see a way to improve things? How could this make the patient experience any better? And I would really engage in some like thought provoking kinds of questions. And I think kind of bringing her into something bigger than just it's the typing of the tape, you know? Because I mean, young Ty couldn't see anything other than that. That was all that I had exposure to. I had no idea how the office ran or bigger concepts in general because, I was a baby worker, right? I was just getting started. I didn't even know what questions to ask. And so I really just would involve me much more in the why is this important? How do we use this? What do you see as an area for improvement?
What do you say? Because I think what you just said was so important. Someone with high significance at a young age is very aware of self and especially how self relates to others. And so that this idea that you would be told, well, you just did it all. You went too fast means that there is an equipping for leaders to realize, whoa, we just hired a high performer. And this is a good thing. This person will run circles. And I have found myself at times having to come to leaders to say, I don't know that you can fully appreciate who you hired because this is such a rare strength. But when it is leveraged, you are talking about some of the most impactful and powerful people in terms of what they can do for you.
I think people miss that. And what we've seen, you and I have seen this, is where a manager might be afraid to hire somebody who's got that because they suddenly feel threatened. And I always wanted to say, I am not a threat to you. Like, together, we are better. Look at what we could do together. Look how awesome I can make you look. Don't be threatened by me. Like, let's go there together.
I've heard that all the way up to the CEO. I've heard it all the way up to a senior leader going, did we just hire my replacement at 25? Did that person just come in here?
And then you and I are like, yes, and that's awesome. And they're like, I don't, is it though? But what I like to, I always love analogies and mental images that people can think of because I think storytelling is one of our best forms of communication. I want you to imagine like a border collie dog in your head. Now, these dogs are smart and they need a job. And if you don't give them a job, they will come up with a job. And it is almost always guaranteed not to be what you would like. It might be destroying your backyard, digging giant holes, eating through the drywall from this room into the next one, or any number of such things, right? But if you can give that border collie a job and keep it focused, but I do think it takes effort on the part of a manager. You can't just hire somebody like that and throw them in the back room and turn the light out and shove a pizza under the door and like, okay, my part is done. It's like, I do think they are going to be more demanding of their manager.
That is clear. And I think for our listeners today, some of you who are coaches, some of you who are strengths practitioners within your places of work, I think TyAnn has done an excellent job of helping you understand the strength of significance. And if you have further questions for her, TyAnn, where could they find you if they wanted just to say howdy and ask you maybe a bit more about this or even learn what you do?
Absolutely. So the website is TyAnnOsborn.com. It's helpful to have the unique name, Brandon, because I have all the URLs. So email TyAnn at TyAnnOsborn.com. My social media of choice is LinkedIn, and that's where I put out the majority of the content and love to engage with a dialogue on LinkedIn.
Well, TyAnn, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners, you're going to hear a word from our sponsor as we wrap up our time. But on behalf of myself and TyAnn, thank you for joining us to learn all about the strength of significance today. TyAnn, thanks a bunch, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you for tuning in to the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Please feel free to reach out to Brandon to partner with 34 Strong for collaboration opportunities to serve your employees or clients together. If you are a strengths coach, lead a strengths-based team, or are a fan of strength, we invite you to receive our complimentary resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, Understanding My Contributions and Needs. Email Brandon_Miller at 34strong.com to connect, and he will gladly share this resource that will continue to unlock the power of strength.